Now that the global campaign for Temple Mount prayer rights has been launched, I've found myself stuck between the Dome of the Rock and a hard place. Even though it is a contentious, controversial, and uncomfortable place, I'm compelled to move forward by bringing to light how this pastor got caught in the crosshairs of conflict between the Jordanian Waqf, the Israeli police, and a symbolic lone rabbi. It all started several weeks ago when I was on the Temple Mount doing research and something seemed out of the ordinary. I was awestruck when I saw a man surrounded by some Jewish young people and a few armed Israeli police, accompanied by what I have come to learn are standard Waqf observers. As I was drawn to this group with my video camera, I noticed that some of them, including the teacher, were not wearing shoes. As I got closer, I recognized the man as the former director of the Temple Institute, but didn't know his name. I noticed that they were being filmed, and just when I was getting close enough to hear what was being taught, one of the officers took out his phone and took a picture of me. What looked and sounded like a holy moment ended up being the quiet before the storm. After that photo op, I marched over to the Temple Institute and boldly asked if there was any way for me to get the name and contact information for the red-headed rabbi teaching up on the Temple Mount. The next thing I knew, we were meeting at his favorite Old City restaurant to discuss what I had seen on God's holy hill. He then led me up to where he could proudly display the beauty of the Temple Mount.
There it is, my friend.
After our encounter, I figured it was a one-and-done meeting. That was until I ran into Rabbi Glick again on the Temple Mount a couple weeks later and was rebuked and removed by Waqf security for requesting that he do a quick meet and greet with my tour group. I assumed again that this second encounter was the end of my interaction with Rabbi Yehuda and the end of the story of getting kicked off and ticked off until something happened that changed everything. A week later, as I was leaving the Western Wall after prayer, I was stopped in my tracks when I noticed a line forming to ascend the Temple Mount on the Jerusalem holiday of Purim. I decided to jump back into the long line of inconvenience to see if I would be allowed to ascend again. After the standard 2-hour wait, I was on my way up the ramp. There was an increased Israeli police presence and many more Muslim worshipers than usual, including a surprising sight of a group of men carrying a dead body from the Al-Aqsa Mosque. As my head was spinning, wondering what was going on, I kept my eye out for the religious police just in case I was still on their watch list, hoping they wouldn't recognize me since I covered my brown bald head with a hat. It just so happens that by coincidence, if you believe in such things, that my new friend Rabbi Yehuda Glick also ascended on Purim. However, there was no kippah large enough to disguise the red-headed rabbi when a mob of men who were in no mood to share their holy site with a Jew just happened to appear as soon as he arrived. Yehuda decided to bring a second witness, his camera phone, to record the attempted ambush just in case there was no one willing to testify to his innocence. After that planned Purim protest, Rabbi Yehuda Glick was detained, charged, and banned from the Temple Mount, not by the Muslim Waqf, but by the Israeli police, who are supposed to protect those Jews who have enough chutzpah to ascend God's holy hill, even when they find themselves in the crosshairs of conflict and chaos. After his removal, things got worse. On the day after the Temple Mount had been closed for the entire 7-day period of Passover to all non-Muslims, there was another coordinated attack on Jewish families with children. Let me be clear, there are many Muslim worshipers who must not be lumped into the same group of those who have determined to use the Temple Mount as a place of taunting and terror rather than a place of peace and prayer. After seeing the assault on children and watching the unjust banning of Rabbi Yehuda Glick unfold before my eyes, I was honored to address via video the emergency Liba meeting in Jerusalem as a pastor who had just happened to be in the right or wrong place at the wrong or right time, depending on who you ask. As we struggle for hope in the midst of discouragement, I think of Ruby Bridges, a symbol of the civil rights movement who at age 6 was cursed at and called names by those who were determined to dissuade her from desegregating their schools. Over time, the voices of dissent faded and the voices that demanded equal access for education were heard. Even her name carried purpose, as she was one of the bridges that spanned the racial education gap in the Deep South. Could it be that Rabbi Yehuda, who was banned from the Temple Mount on Purim by Israeli police, also carries a name that calls for change? Even if the fireworks of fear are sparked by his presence, I say, Tenu leYehuda la'alot, let Yehuda ascend.
Well, we're talking about different fire. We're talking about a fire from inside. The connection between man and God. Right over there, on the place where stood the temple, which was the location of the presence of God in the world. The place where God chose to rest his name in this world. Would be the only obvious thing to do at this place would be to pray. A deep prayer. This should be a house of prayer for all nations, for all those who are faithful in the one and only God. This is a place of tolerance in the name of God, a place of peace in the name of God. It's a place of love in the name of God. And anybody who does not understand that message should not be allowed onto that mountain. We're calling all of those in the free world, support us, freedom to pray. Freedom to pray.
Many Jews, Catholics, Protestants, and tourists simply want fair and respectful access to a path for peaceful prayer where the God of Abraham has placed his name and fixed his eyes forever. This place is ultimately going to be a house of prayer for all nations.